At 6 o'clock with your BBC News update, I'm Catherine White. The tour operator TUI has begun an investigation after a flight from Zante to Cardiff last week was linked to at least 16 cases of coronavirus. Passengers have complained that cabin crew failed to enforce the rules on face coverings. All 193 people on board have been told to self-isolate. TUI has insisted health and safety is a priority. Police are still trying to clear hundreds of people from the site of an illegal rave near the Brecon Beacons. Up to 3,000 people from across the UK travelled to the event at Banwyn at the weekend. 8 court summons have been issued, which could see people fined up to £10,000. Dave Thorne, who's an Assistant Chief Constable for South Wales Police, says officers were faced with difficult terrain.
I think what we need to understand here is the significant size of the area they're in. This is 4,000 acres of an old open-cast mine, which is now forested and generally used for rally driving.
The Environment Secretary George Eustace has insisted it's far too early to decide whether next year's GCSE and A-level exams in England should be delayed. Labour has called for them to be put back by up to 2 months to give pupils more time to catch up on lessons lost during the lockdown. A former teacher, Grania Hallahan, who now works for the Times Education Supplement, said the decision needs to be made as soon as possible.
We're not talking about your nanny's birthday party. We're talking about a huge operation where hundreds of thousands of students will be sitting an exam, and it's not simply a matter of, we'll just wait and see. Like people have been saying, we need to have an answer, and we need an answer quickly in order to put all the necessary things in place to make sure the exams can go off properly.
The Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, has thanked restaurants and diners for taking part in the Eat Out to Help Out scheme throughout August. It offered 50% off meals up to £10 a head as the Treasury sought to boost consumer confidence following the lockdown. Chris Galvin, who runs 3 restaurants and a pub, says he'll be extending the scheme at his own expense for another month.
Right now, we just need to do something to survive September. Again, most people I know, they can't really see beyond September, especially in London and the city where we are based. With so many offices not coming back for the foreseeable future, we need something just to keep the wheel moving.
2 men from Kuwait and Italy who were detained by counter-terror police after arriving at Stansted Airport last night have been released. The Ryanair flight from Vienna was escorted by RAF jets as it landed after the crew reported a potential security threat. Police say there's nothing suspicious about a mobile phone that was found in the toilet. Parking on pavements could be banned across England, as it already is in London. The government says it will make it safer for blind and disabled people. You're up to date. It's 3 minutes past 6.
When Sheffield United play at home at Bramall Lane, just before kick-off, something strange happens. The opening bars of an American country folk song plays out over the stadium, and Blades fans rise to their feet to sing along to this. You fill up my senses like a gallon of vodka, like a bucket of blood, like a look in Chester, like a night's house in Sheffield, like a greasy triple T, like a Sheffield The Greasy Chip Butty song. Simple, poetic, magnificent. I think it's the greatest football terrace anthem. But one question about the song is shrouded in mystery. Who created it? I'm Simon Thake, and I'm going on a quest to get to the bottom of this classic anthem. I think it was created by one person, out there somewhere. I want to find them and shake them by the hand. Over the course of the next hour, we'll hear from the fans.
It's a family song because to me it depicts the working class tradition. Hard work, hard play, juvenilistic behaviour and merriment.
We'll hear from those behind the scenes.
You are on the trail of the Holy Grail. And if you get to the bottom of this and find somebody who, after all these years...
And we'll hear from some of the conspiracy theorists.
Hi Simon, here trying to find out about the Greasy Chip Butty song. You're looking in the wrong place, mate.
This is Like a Greasy Chip Butty. So, where do I start? Well, I've lived in Sheffield for over 20 years. Still doesn't make me a Yorkshireman, I know. But it does mean that I know a few Blades fans. Like my friend and long-term Unitedite, Helen Bailey.
In terms of the lyrics, I think it sums up Sheffield quite well. You know, everyone loves a greasy chip butty. Everybody loves a night out in Sheffield. And in fact, I've got a tea towel, which I'm sitting by here doing this interview with you, Simon, that has the lyrics on the wall. I've pinned the T-shirt to my wall and it has the lyrics there. However, I have noticed that there is a little bit of a bone of contention about the lyrics.
Well, hold on. I'll tell you what I've heard, and you can tell me if that's what you think. So I've heard the line about a gallon of magnet. Some people still sing a gallon of maggots. Is that what you've heard?
Why would you have a gallon of maggots?
If you're a fisherman, you take out, like fishing. Fishing is a Sheffield thing as well. You get a lot of fishermen around here, and they would get maggots in a gallon, wouldn't they? Is that what it is?
Well, you wouldn't... It says the lyrics actually are like a gallon of magnet, like a packet of Woodbines. Now, beer is magnet and Woodbines obviously is smoking. So beer and smoking go together, not maggots and smoking.
I agree with that. And you can imagine, as you say, a bloke with a flat cap sitting around a table with a gallon of magnet, smoking a Woodbine, and maybe he's got a greasy chip butty on the go as well. You don't think he'd have a gallon? Yeah, you're right. He wouldn't have a gallon of maggots there, would he?
What would you be doing with maggots? You're not taking them to the game, are you? They're not Sheffield United fans, are they?
Maybe it's a football hooligan thing. Did anyone used to throw maggots on the pitch? Is that what it is?
Possibly. Maybe. I think the maggots thing is a red herring.
Okay, there's a fish thing. What's the bone of contention? Is that what you were going to say then?
No, there's a line at the end. So, like a gallon of magnet, like a packet of Woodbines, like a big good pinch of snuff, like an out in Sheffield, like a greasy chip butty, like Sheffield United, come fill me again, is what it says on the tea towel.
Okay.
But so, I've heard people say, come thrill me again.
Yeah.
Not fill.
What do you sing?
Well, I've always said fill, because it's the greasy chip butty that's filling you up, isn't it? And you want to get filled up again by Sheffield United.
Fill me with full of glee and joy at watching such a brilliant team. Yeah. Someone else who's fascinated by the lyrics to the Greasy Chip Butty song is anthropologist Gary Armstrong. He's been a Blade since 1968. But before we got into the finer point of snuff and magnet, first he wanted to tell me about a man who's central to this story, Mr. John Denver. The man who composed Annie's song.
It's an interesting song because, after all, it had made the charts in 1974, which was a considerable number of years before it was heard amongst the Blades fans, and written by a chap who had absolutely no connection with Sheffield. He was actually born in New Mexico and kind of a moon-faced fella with big, thick spectacles, singing about his love for his wife, who wouldn't surprise anybody. He's called Annie, or was called Annie, because the song was so successful she couldn't cope with his success and left him. And then when divorce proceedings were underway in 1982, he tried to choke her, and then famously he took a power saw to the marital bed and chopped it in half. So whatever his unrequited love at one time, it wasn't quite there a decade later.
Well, I'm not sure how litigious the John Denver estate is. Either way, how does a song about nights in the forest change to one about chips and beer? Here's Gary again.
It celebrates John Smith's Magnet beer. Well, Magnet is brewed in Tadcaster, 4% strong. It wasn't a Sheffield beer, but it was drunk in Sheffield, and I remember it in 1978 when it was 34 pence a pint in the Brown Bear, very close to the Crucible. So snuff was, what is snuff? It's basically scented, finely ground scented tobacco, which you shove up your nose. Started in 17th century Europe, 18th century. It's an aristocratic thing in Britain, probably brought to South Yorkshire by coal miners who obviously couldn't spark up a cigarette down below. They'd use snuff as a tobacco alternative. And then you've got Woodbines. Interestingly, Woodbines, a very strong cigarette, founded in 1888, so a year before the foundation of Sheffield United. But I don't think there's any correlate there at all with Sheffield. Put it together, you've got a celebration of carbohydrates, excessive drinking, and putting tobacco up your nose. All of it not very healthy, and all of it a self-denigration, really. Now, once went to a talk by a professor called Maurice Bloch, and he came out with a line which has always fascinated me, and he said, "You can't argue with a song." Always wondered, you know, when you look at the renditions that go back and forth between fans at football matches, can you argue with a song? And if you say yes, what is there to argue with when you hear renditions of Greasy Chip Butty?
You can't argue with a song. I like that. I'm not 100% sure what it means, but I like that. I was still pondering it when I decided it was time to hit the road.
Okay, we've stopped and wait. Daddy is looking for the house.
If I'm going to find this person, I need to knock on a lot of doors and speak to a number of people. Where better to start than the voice of Bramall Lane? Matchday announcer Gary Sinclair. He's the man that plays the intro to Annie's song at the start of each half. Turns out finding him, though, proved quite tricky.
You don't live on this road, do you?
I don't, but I live round here.
There can't be many houses on it.
No, these are mainly...
Bramall Lane's got a little shed.
Someone's doing all right for themselves.
Someone is doing all right for themselves.
Whilst I cooed over Gary's homemade pitch and putt course in his garden, for goodness sake, and his red and white Bramall Lane shed, the man himself was keen to get down to business.
In the sort of Kevin Blackwell area, we were doing well, and again, Wembley and the build-up, we had a great season, and I started playing it virtually every match in the build-up to the kick-off. And I got chatting with Kevin Blackwell. He says, "I love this because it's our song," and he was as passionate as anybody with it. And then we just had this idea. I says, "I wonder if we get away with it just before kick-off." And then Blackie said, "Well, you can't play music while, you know, we've kicked off, and obviously league requirements." I says, "Well, I wonder what happened if we just played the opening bar." And he says, "Well, try it."
So are you looking down at the pitch and thinking, okay, this has got to work?
Yeah, this has got to work. And I said to my sound engineer, I says, "Right, this is what I want you to do. When we're just about to kick off, just play the opening bars, the guitar, ding, 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 and then let him sing, you fill up my senses, and then kill it dead." He says, "Fade it." I said, "No, kill it dead. No fade, kill." And he says, "What are you expecting?" I said, "I don't know."
And what happened that first time?
They sang it.
I bet your heart was in your mouth a bit.
Well, we have walkie-talkie. I just go and I says, "Oh my God, it worked."
You fill up my senses.
All these details are absolute gold to me. It really speaks to my inner radio nerd, how these things started. I want the intricate details. But my overriding thing, the elephant in the room is, does Gary Sinclair know who started the Greasy Chip Butty song? I couldn't wait much longer.
The Greasy Chip Butty song, and to adapt a country music song to a worldwide football anthem is just a phenomenon in itself. I just wish I could claim it. And I don't think there is one single person, because they would have been recognised long.
Well, this is don't say that. I'm saying how to shake someone's hand.
No, you are on the trail of the Holy Grail, and if you get to the bottom of this and find somebody who, after all these years, I mean, we're talking 35 years. somebody would have claimed it by now, and they would have copyrighted it, got the website, you name it. And there are misconceptions about some of the lyrics. I've always, it's a gallon of magnet. It's never been maggots. And I think the confusion there is because any old Yorkshire fisherman used to buy a gallon of maggots. It's a pint of maggots or a gallon of maggots. So it's never been maggots. It's always been magnet. And it's all Sheffield. Now, I am led to believe it was originally a night out in Rotherham. Now, that sets the conspiracy theorists going. And some said, a Rotherham song. No, it wasn't.
Now there's only one team and there's only one city I love.
I must admit, I left Gary Sinclair's with mixed feelings. He thinks this is the Holy Grail. No pressure there, then.
In the dark that feels all in the road on a dark Saturday afternoon.
According to Wikipedia, there are several different versions of the Greasy Chip Butty song. This is one of the most recent, by Sheffield's Max Rustino. But other clubs have also created their own alternatives to the Blades classic, including Burton Albion, Grimsby Town, and even St Helens Rugby Club. Here's St Helens historian Steve Lingard.
You light up my senses like a garland of greenhalls, like a kebab from Gino's, like a good sniff of glue, like a night out at Martin's, like a split fish and curry. Oh, St Helens Rugby, come thrill me again. Na 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 na. Ooh.
I have to say, Steve, that was one of the most melodic and tuneful renditions of the Greasy Chip Butty song I've ever heard. We need to unpick this a little bit. So I was drawn to a few lyrics there. I couldn't help noticing one of them was like a good sniff of glue. I think these lyrics are nice and romantic, the Sheffield ones. There's nothing romantic about a good sniff of glue. What's going on there, then?
Most of the people I remember seeing across the park and furtively through the bushes of sniffing glue back at that time didn't strike me as match-going rugby fans. So I think this is a flight of lyrical fancy rather than something that was happening on the terraces at Knowsley Road back then. I think
were and what can you tell me about them or an individual?
I'm afraid my memory is patchy. All I could say is that I was 17, so they would have been older than me. They were men in their 20s, 30s. It was a group that were probably just having a good laugh for the day, and I just wonder whether they'd made that song up that day. I don't know.
And we should just to go back very quickly before I try to dig deep and see if they had any identifying tattoos on their heads or anything at all. But
you were travelling home and away. You were going to a lot of United games. So if you hadn't heard the song before that season, the chances are that song hadn't been sung by anybody that season. Is that fair to say? Or
it's possible. I'd certainly never heard it sung at the home games, and I was at that time probably just about all of the home games, really. And away games, I went to the ones that were certainly nearby. And if there's one thing that stuck in my mind since then is that they used to... now one of the lines is like a night out in Sheffield, but I think when I heard it that day there was a different place being named, and I cannot, because it was only a small group from a distance, and I didn't focus on them thinking this is going to be the song that will be surrounding the club for the next 20 years or so. It was just another song being sung by some fellow fans. So
might it have been a night out in Rotherham?
No, I don't think it was. My memory is it was 2 syllables and Rotherham's 3 syllables. So my thought would be it could have been somewhere like Bayton, but I think I'm sort of presuming it will be a suburban area of Sheffield rather than anywhere else. But it was like a night out in, and then it had 2 syllables. Like Sheffield is. Sheffield, yes. It was like...
But definitely not Sheffield, not the city.
That's my memory of it, yeah.
Was the Greasy Chip Butty song created on an away trip to Southend in April 1984? If I can't trust a priest, who can I trust? I needed to find those blokes, possibly now in their 60s. And what was that 2-syllable town they were singing about? If I knew that, I could narrow down my search. Somebody who was playing in that game at Root Hall was United legend Keith Edwards. He would have been in his second spell at the club and was still banging in the goals in 1984. Now, of course, he's a summariser on BBC Radio Sheffield.
I remember that game very well. It was a very special goal from Kevin Arnott. A lovely play. I had a great understanding with Kevin. The Chip Butty song, well...
And do you remember it on that day?
I have to be honest, no. Most probably because if they weren't singing about me, I wasn't really interested, so I used to like the songs about myself and not anybody else. But the Chip Butty song is an amazing thing. The amount of people that come up to me who are not overly interested in football, but they all seem to know about this Chip Butty song, so it's certainly made its mark.
In a moment, I'm going to give you a moment to think about it. I'm going to get you to sing your favourite song about you. But can you remember roughly the first time you did or became aware of the Greasy Chip Butty song as a thing?
As a player, no. I honestly, I have to tell you the truth. I genuinely can't recall it. Obviously, we're focused on playing football, and sometimes what's happening around you don't always take in. But it's a great song. But no, I have to be honest and say no, I wasn't aware of it. So
in your role now, you must have heard the Greasy Chip Butty song sang up and down the country. It's a special song, isn't it? Tell me about that. Listening to it now, what does it mean to the club?
Before the game starts, and I am aware of the Kop because from where we commentate from, we're pretty close to them, and to hear that out every time before a game starts is very special, and it just gives it a great feeling. It sets the game in the right tone. It's a fabulous song, and I've listened to it for many years now, doing me summarising.
Now that you're retired from the game, you're allowed to have a gallon of Magnet and smoke a wood pipe and Greasy Chip Butty. Do you frequent any of that stuff?
Well, on occasions I might have a gallon of Magnet, but I wouldn't smoke, that's for sure. But no, I'll have a beer or two. I listen to it, and it just gives me a great feeling that the supporters get such a kick out of doing it. And that's special, because that's how the game starts. That's how every game starts at Bramall Lane. Supporters are right behind it.
Presumably nobody has ever tapped you on the shoulder when you're out and about and said, Keith, by the way, it was me that started that song. You can't help me out here, can you?
I wish I could, mate, but I think they've tapped me on the shoulder and said something not so polite, but like run around, Keith, for a change or something like that. But no,
so there we go. Legend of the club, Keith Edwards, does not know about the origins of the Greasy Chip Butty song. But what about the current crop of players? What about the current Blades legends? Well, given the nature of football clubs these days, most players aren't local lads. They didn't grow up supporting the club. They're just as likely to come from Pittsburgh, as Pittsmore, but it just so happens that Sheffield United do have one of their own on the books. And he's the club captain.
At the byline, in it goes, low chance, cleared off the line, Sharp's there battling and he scored! Billy Sharp, the Sheffield United captain!
Got Billy Sharp, we got Billy Sharp!
It's funny actually because my two boys now sing the song and my youngest one says maggots instead of magnet, and then my oldest one I had to tell him that what magnet was. It wasn't a magnet that he knows. It was a pint of bitter, if you like, and that was same for me. So I'm living my childhood memories through my boys again with that song. I didn't know when I was a kid exactly what some of the words meant, but I remember singing along to it. It's just a really catchy song that still gives me goosebumps to this day when I hear it before the game. And I used to go to the matches with my dad, and I remember sometimes if we was running slightly late from just before kick-off and the song coming on, running up the turnstile steps, and I don't know where it came from or who created it, but it's definitely Sheffield United's anthem, and like I say, it gives me goosebumps every time I hear it.
Can you sort of take yourself away from the game as the game's kicking off, and you are aware of that song and all the fans singing it? How does that make you feel when you hear it?
Yeah, before every home game, when they play that song and the fans sing it and it goes over and around the stadium and it goes into like 10 seconds of the game or what have you, I always find myself singing it as the game's just kicked off. I still do now, even whether I'm playing or I'm not.
Now, if I'm being completely honest, there is one Blade who I've kind of been avoiding. John Garrett, or JG. He's basically the unofficial club historian for Sheffield United. What he doesn't know about the goings-on of Bramall Lane probably aren't worth knowing. And the truth is, if he doesn't know the identity of this mystery person, what chance have I got? There is a house just back there with, I think I saw a Sheffield United teddy in the window. I think I'm on the right track. This is like the place. No uninvited traders. Is that me? No, I think I'm okay. John, hello.
Garden's a bit damp. Are you comfortable with dining room?
Yeah.
It's probably like all great things in Sheffield. It happens over beer in a pub. I always think football songs, they're very much like a form of folk music. That sounds a strange analogy, but how much the songs will change from when they were first sung in 1700 up to modern day. Football songs are like that. It's really, really difficult to actually put down the person who first sang it or wrote it. It'd be great if they came forward, but how do you prove it? You know, it's like a lot of things. But it extols virtues of a time, in a sense, long gone. You know, fags, greasy food, ale. Yeah, it's an incredible thing. It's incredible how it's sort of grown and become such a part of the actual bedrock of the ground and the club itself.
Have you ever, in your research, in your work, set out to try and dig a bit deeper and uncover who might have come up with this?
No, why? I mean, why would you do that? It's
exactly.
You know, there's no copyright. We're not talking Lennon and McCartney, are we? Why should you? I mean, it's just it's part of the family tree, and you don't have to dig too far. What does it matter where it came from in the end? I mean, whoever did it, if the man is out there who came up with it, he must feel an intense sense of pride. I'm sure John Denver's estate would like some royalties out of it at some point. But, you know, if it's one person, or whether it's just a mutation from a song, from a comment, over a bevy, as we've said, or whatever, I don't know. But if you thought of that, you'd have such a feeling of intense pride if you were a Blade, that let's argue the fact it's 40 years on from it first emerging in its embryonic stages, it's just sung with such fervour and passion in the ground that I feel chuffed to bits if I'd done that. That'd be better than Ryan A. Jude.
Well, that's my worry. If I'd be put every on Twitter handles, on whatever, my email address would be something involved with that as well. That's my concern. It might be someone would have come out and said it, wouldn't they? Or
Sheffield people are like that, don't you find? I mean, that to me sums up Sheffield football fans, or certainly United fans. That there's a sort of a reticence to sort of go all out there and tell you what's happening. There's a sort of privacy about it all, in a sense, and I think that's pretty cool.
Oh, it is cool, John. It's wonderful. Sheffield folk are humble and don't brag about their achievements like some of our showy neighbours. Quite right. Doesn't help me in my search for this shy mystery person, though, does it? At this point, I suppose my confidence does feel somewhat shredded. Speaking of which, we need to take a diversion. We need to talk about Shred, a name that on my quest keeps cropping up again and again.
One of the biggest, most famous United fans of modern times was Shred, who sadly died in 2015, I think. David Spencer. He went everywhere. Pre-season tours abroad. I don't think he ever missed a game. He organised coach trips. He was the most famous Sheffield United fan around for probably 20, 30 years. Everybody knew him.
The legend that David Spencer, bless him, he passed away a few years ago, and he was the skipper, the leader. His coach tours, Shred tours, just the stuff of legend. They were lucky if they got a taxed coach, or Charabang, I think, Shred's preferred mode of transport.
Shred is David Nathaniel Spencer, who resided in Thake. He first started going to the lane in the early 60s.
He's your mate, isn't he?
Yes, he was my best friend. We spent 41 years rooming together on pre-season tours, either at home or abroad.
This is Bill Brayley. He's been watching United since 1968. When he told me about Shred, his eyes glistened.
Shred was much older than me. Shred would have been not far off 20 at that time, maybe 18, something like that.
Took you under his wing.
Absolutely, same as he did with everybody. Shred was the nicest person that you could ever wish to meet, and I think anybody what hears you talking about, Shred will know him immediately. Over 3,000 people turned up to his funeral, which was one of the biggest funerals City Road has ever seen. The whole city came to a standstill. It was incredible. He was a lovely bloke, and one story about Shred's tours, no matter whether it was one minibus because we were going to Plymouth on a Tuesday night, or whether it was 13 coaches to Arsenal in a fifth round FA Cup tie, it didn't matter. There was one rule: there was no hooliganism, no violence. Anybody caught with a black mark against them for violence or hooliganism were automatically banned for life from the coach. And this was Shred's life.
So there was no trouble, there was no violence, but there was drinking, was there?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, it was legendary drinking. I mean, these were the same lads, the same 56 lads on that, if we only took one coach, what were out every Friday from finishing work at the 4 o'clock whistle, straight through until 2 o'clock in the morning. We would go to nightclubs on a Friday night because of the extension to the licensing hours. We could drink till 2 o'clock. Get to bed at 3 o'clock in the morning, be up at 4 o'clock to go to Plymouth or Torquay or Exeter.
So what about someone soft like me who can barely take his ale? Would I have been welcomed or told to go and find alternative accommodation?
No, of course you'd have been welcome, but whether you'd have enjoyed it is
Bill told me story after story about the legend of Shred, and dodgy coaches, and dodgy pints. Frankly, it made my eyes water too. But I was curious about another aspect of Bill's life. Actually, all of these fans' lives. What about their other halves? Let me have a quick word with your better half, if I might. Would that be up for that? Just very quickly.
What, to go?
I want you to tell me a bit about what it's like to be the other half of someone who's obsessed with Sheffield United. Because I've spoken to a lot of blokes. What's your name, sorry?
Anne. You have to wash so many football shirts that have been stored up that he's been and bought every season. And I washed about 250 football shirts.
Hold on a sec, he is classic greasy chip butty man, he makes you wash the football shirts.
Exactly.
I don't think she loves it.
But, they were on a washing line, and they have, because he's very anal, he'd got his, the year and...
club sponsors.
The club sponsors. He's got shirts that... from people who are match-worn shirts, haven't you?
Players were worn.
So he's upstairs, there are match-worn shirts.
And Bill said I wasn't allowed to come to his place because it was probably a bit too obscene in terms of the amount of United stuff. What can you tell me about it?
It's a house that's full of football programmes. He'd go to a football match and he would buy one programme to read, one to keep, and another one just for the sake of it.
Plastic bag.
In a plastic bag.
Always 3 programmes every match.
Yeah, 3 programmes. Rings up ahead to get his team sheets.
Very sad, Simon.
Incredibly sad. And the house is not just full of Sheffield United, it's full of teams that he's not really into.
Well, I'd probably embarrassed Bill enough. But one thing that Pam and Bill had helped crystallise in my mind, surely Greasy Chip Butty Person was a man. In the late 1970s and early 80s, the drinking, the obsessive collecting of programmes, the good pinch of snuff. This is a bloke, surely. It had to be. The problem is, I didn't feel I was much closer to identifying the name of the mystery man. Not for the first time, I needed help. It was about time I put the call out to the good people of South Yorkshire and North Derbyshire. If only I had access to a platform in which to do that.
Football Heaven on BBC Radio Sheffield, 0800 111 49 49 the number. Looking for your player of the season and your moment of the season. Now, when you look at your email inbox, you do get a lot of dross in there, but this one certainly piqued my interest when it popped in recently. Just reading the opener. Gents, I wondered if I might be able to come on Football Heaven at some point to punt for some Greasy Chip Butty intel. Good evening, Simon Thake.
Good evening, Mike. Yeah, I forgot I wrote it like that. I mean, that sums it up, though.
What are you trying to do?
Well, it is a strange one. So, obviously, during lockdown, I'd held back from putting a call out on Twitter or on Radio Sheffield so far because I thought I'd get inundated with time wasters trying it on. But the truth is, I put the call out and I waited and waited until two things happened. After a week, I received an email from a man called Popeye and a voicemail from Brian the Miller.
Hi, Simon. It's Brian the Miller here. He's trying to find out about the Greasy Chip Butty song. You're looking in the wrong place, mate. You should be looking at Rotherham back in the 1970s, middle 70s. OK, buddy. No problem.
Mr. Popeye said in his email that I needed to speak to a member of the Rotherham Blades, a fella called Gavin Hancock. But Gavin Hancock was not answering my calls. So first, I spoke to Brian the Miller.
Hello.
Hello, Brian. It's Simon, Radio Sheffield.
Hey, pal, how are you doing?
I'm okay. Are you?
I'm fine. I'm just getting me leg on out and just...
Naturally, we started by discussing Sunday dinner. But then Brian gave me his pitch for why this should be a very different song story.
I always cook dinner on a Sunday.
Are you in the mood to chat about the Greasy Chip Butty song?
But yeah, it all came to fruition last night. There were so many came back and said we heard it had been wrote on Riley's bus, as I said. Then another one came back and said, no, it weren't wrote on O'Reilly's bus, it was wrote in the Queen's pub. Also, a guy came back last night that in 1977, one or two remember it being sang against Crystal Palace on to Raleigh End. And there's been quite a numerous people come back to me and said, yeah, it was a Rotherham song. It was wrote by a Rotherham fan, the words to it. But Sheffield United nicked it. Rotherham weren't bothered. Let D-Dawes keep it. That's the words I've got back.
In his own words, Brian admitted that he had a tendency to go off on one, but that I had to speak to a Margaret Chapman, another long-term Rotherham fan who had heard me on Football Heaven and had set about doing her own research.
Well, I couldn't tell you whether we did pinch it or not, but I do remember the song.
You remember singing it?
I don't remember personally singing it. I remember listening to it. I always remember the line about the Greasy Chip Butty, and it always made me laugh.
It's a good line.
But I remember it being a popular song to the John Denver Anis song, I think it is.
That's the one, John Denver, 1974. So far,
yeah.
United fans have been saying to me, about 1983, 84, we started the song. Yeah. Now, are you saying it was before then that you heard it?
Oh, it's definitely before then, yeah. I would say... I would remember it from, I think, the early 80s, but it could be before then.
And you wouldn't have said a night out in Sheffield then, would you? What were you singing? A night out in Rotherham?
I'm not sure. I think they sing a night out in Masborough.
Yeah. What's a night out in Masborough like?
I've absolutely no idea. I was only a teenager at that time, and I didn't tend to go out to pubs particularly.
So you remember it from your early days, early 80s?
Yeah.
Well before 1984?
I'd say before then, yeah.
So it is entirely possible, but Sheffield United fans heard the song and thought, well, I like that.
I would say it definitely is possible, yeah.
And do you remember any of the fans, those hardcore fans that were singing full voice? So there must have been some characters back then. Because I'm trying to track somebody down.
Yeah, OK. Well, one or two people mentioned a gentleman by the name of Terry Rack, and they thought that he might have been the original person who wrote this song, but I've not been able to locate this gentleman. But I have discovered one or two people who have heard of him. As well as that, people told me that it was definitely a Rotherham song, that Sheffield United stole it from us.
Terry Rack. Is he my man? I'm in nosebleed territory here. Margaret managed to find another name for me too. Graham Barnes, a man who used to go to Millmore back in the 70s and 80s with one Terry Rack. By the way, fun side note, Graham now runs a Rotherham-themed guest house in Bridlington. I know, brilliant, right? But now is not the time to be sidetracked. I've come a long way. Did Terry Rack create the Greasy Chip Butty song?
Yeah, that's definitely right. In the late 1970s, we used to stand on the Tivoli, a bit towards the right-hand side, a group of about 30 of us, and one of the lads called Terry Moran, everyone knew him as Reich, he used to make songs up to try and get fans to sing and support the club. Really, most of them were a bit too complicated for us Northerners. But old Terry came up with this one that we called the Gallon of Magnet song. We used to sing that for quite a few years, and I think in round about 82, the Blades fans started singing it, and they adopted it as their anthem.
Whoa, hold on a sec. How do you know it's this guy Terry?
Because he used to travel to games with us. He's a staunch Rotherham fan, bit of a character. He don't go as often as he used to do, but yeah, I ain't seen Terry myself for a couple of years now, but yeah, it's always great to bump into him and talk about good old days.
Do you remember the first time he sang that song to you or talked about he had a new song?
No, we'd stand together and he'd start singing something, and if it were catchy, we'd join in. And basically, that Gallon of Magnet song, it is very catchy. I mean, it's a great, funny tune. It's typical northern working class. And we used to sing like a neat out in Masborough instead of a neat out in Sheffield, obviously.
A neat out in Masborough? What's a neat out in Masborough like?
Not very good now, because I think there's only 2 or 3 pubs left. But back in the day, there were nearly as many pubs in Masborough as in Rotherham Town Centre.
So, OK, and you called it... See, I've been calling it the Greasy Chip Butty song. I'm going in search of Greasy Chip Butties. You called it the Gallon of Magnet song.
Yeah, we did, yeah.
Right, OK. If it had been stolen, I'd have thought Rotherham fans would have kicked up more of a fuss. Are you... Every time you hear it, does it make you annoyed?
I think it did when I first heard them singing it, but I think good credit to them. I think they do it really well, and it's considered a Blades anthem now. We don't sing it because I suppose they pinched it, but they do a good job of it, so good on them. It's credit to Terry, really, that it's caught on so well.
I've got to track down this Terry then. So you haven't seen him for a number of years, but you think he's still...
He goes to matches when he can. I don't think he goes as often as he used to do, but that's like always, that's just an age thing.
I may get to meet the man who started the Greasy Chip Butty song, or I should call it the Gallon of Magnet song.
It's Gallon of Magnet song for us, and a neat out in Masborough.
You're listening to Like a Greasy Chip Butty. I'm Simon Thake, and I'm going in search of the person who created that classic anthem. My search has just nudged me towards Rotherham and a man called Terry Rack, or Terry Moran. But before I go any further down that road, I need to catch up with another Blade. I put the call out on Football Heaven, and a man called Popeye got back in touch. However, he doesn't want to be interviewed, but he said I had to speak to a man called Gavin Hancock, a member of the Rotherham Blades.
Well, Popeye is Andy Keyworth, a friend of mine. The reason he's called Popeye is because he spent most of his early life in the Navy. So his nickname is obviously Popeye. As regard the Greasy Chick Butty song, it comes from some old friends in the pub who were singing, and we altered the song around somewhat and created a new song that went with Sheffield United.
Hold on a sec. This might not be anything to you. This is massive for me. I've been going on this flipping journey for ages. And I think I've been trying to meet you and maybe some of your friends. Whenever I've spoke to anyone about the origins of the Greasy Chip Butty song, they say you need to speak to the Rotherham Blades. What can you tell me?
It comes about from going in the pubs in Rotherham and a pub called the Mail Coach on Westgate, and us being in there most weekends when we weren't at the football. And I came across a guy called Terry Rack. Terry Rack's an old friend from the days gone by who was a massive Rotherham United fan. And we'd sing songs and banter with each other backwards and forwards. He sang that song to me, and the song was about a night out in Masborough, and obviously about Magnet, which is the beer that we were all drinking at the time, John Smith's Magnet. And he sort of sang that song to me with the lyrics of a night out in Masborough, which then subsequently I changed to suit the Sheffield United, and we started singing it then on the coaches, etc., on the minibuses, and then it just spread from there, really.
When would this have been?
1980, 1981 time. Yeah, my memory's not that good the older you get, but it's definitely pre-82.
Why do you say that?
Because, well, I can sort of remember pre-82 and where we were in the first game of the season. I think it was Portsmouth away. There'd be 3 or 4 of us that particular night, I remember, and we were singing songs, a few rugby songs, just songs in general. And he started singing that one, and I'd never heard it before. And I thought that was brilliant, and sort of remembered it from that night after a few more beers, and then we just adapted it.
I'm slightly amazed that the song was created by a Rotherham United fan. Was he annoyed that you took it and tweaked it and took it to Bramall Lane?
I should imagine so, but just in those days we didn't have the internet, didn't have the mobile phones as such, so it was more difficult. So you just made contact, had a chat, sung a few songs when you were drunk, and that's basically how songs I think come about anyway. So I remember bumping into Shred, who's dead now, probably 4 or 5 years ago, and he said, "Hey up, Gav, it's Mr. Greasy Chip Butty Man," and that's what he knew me as, Gav the Greasy Chip Butty Man.
Gavin Hancock, the Rotherham Blade, the elusive Rotherham Blade, the man that brought the Greasy Chip Butty song to Bramall Lane. Now, I can't see you in the flesh because you're in North Wales, but I salute you and virtually shake your hand. Well done to you, sir. You should have that on your gravestone at some point.
Yeah, no, that's what my lad always says. Put the Greasy Chip Butty on the gravestone. Hopefully it won't be soon, that, but hopefully I'll see a few more games before that happens.
So this is it. I may have come to the end of the road, the end of my journey. It's been a long one, and it's been a twisty old path, and it's led me to Rotherham and a very wet and cold, miserable day. Grey skies, rain teeming it down. But I think I'm about to meet the man who is going to tell me that he created the Greasy Chip Butty song, and I'm a bit nervous about it because it all seems a bit too good to be true. This is the elusive Terry Moran.
You fill up my... As I said, I don't remember putting pen to paper apart from scribbling on toilet wall at Mail Coach a couple of lines of it.
So the Mail Coach is a pub that exists?
Oh yeah. The pub still exists. I mean, it was originally a coaching house, but going back to the 70s, it just had 2 rooms. But for some reason, I remember taking my biro out.
So you wrote the first 2 lines. Go on. So what were those 2 lines you wrote?
That fills up my senses like a gallon of Magnet. And then this is how it starts. And I might have written another couple of lines somewhere, maybe in the toilet cubicle. Maybe I had to use that one then. I thought, but I can't remember specifically what what it was. But as I said, that toilet no longer exists.
You can't see it.
It's become incorporated into...
There should be a blue plaque. There should be a blue plaque on the wall. So here lies the birthplace of the Greasy Chip Butty song. Or should I be calling it the Gallon of Magnet song?
I never really had a specific name for it, but I do. Gallon of Magnet definitely was the inspiration, not so much Greasy Chip Butty was just a part of the other things that go together for a good day out when you're going to football. And I think that's really... Because I've never sat down and analysed it. I think the snuff was basically because they actually used to make it in Sheffield. I know there was Wilson's was a snuff factory. I think it was on Ecclesall Road.
It's horrible snuff.
It is, but if you're addicted to nicotine and you have to work 8 hours down a pit, you've got to have some nicotine on board.
So it's a good pinch.
It's a good pinch. Well, they could take a tin down with them.
And that's where the line, it rang true to you.
Old fellas used to say, pubs around Masborough at that time were all a bit grotty, and if you went for a night out, if you were taking a girl out, you'd take her to the best pubs in town. You certainly wouldn't take her up Masborough. But there were a lot of them. There were 7 or 8 pubs pretty close to Milmore football ground.
That was the line, a night out in Masborough.
In Masborough, yeah. Greasy Chip Butty. As I said, there were very little there in Masborough. In the opposite football ground, there were a fish and chip shop, a bookies, and perhaps might have been a tobacconist, I suppose, to get your woodbines from.
I was saying to you that I thought I had this romantic idea of a fella sitting down with a pad and a pen and working it out. And I think you're saying to me, it was a bit more organic than that. I didn't exactly sit down and write it down.
No,
but it was in your head.
It came together over a period of time.
And what did you think of Annie's song then? Why Annie's song?
Why Annie's? I just think because it's going back to the punk era, 70, 78, 79, and there was just something about dismantling.
It's quite a sweet song.
Although it wasn't British, it was just that sort of schmaltzy, sympathetic.
So you were kind of unpicking it in a kind of way.
Stripping it to basics and taking the buzzsaw to it and making a Rotherham version of it was, I suppose. But I didn't really think about it that much. I didn't. So obviously, my Irish background, loads and loads of things that I made up to Irish tunes. And I'm not a good singer either. I can't sing. I can't hold a note in my head. So if I was singing something that nobody had a bloody clue, I'd have been better off writing it to the toilet wall,
Do you hear it now and think, hold on a sec, that line isn't right? You said the last line.
Yeah.
What's not right then? What's changed?
Simply to me was the whole thing about snuff was to rhyme with enough.
Go on.
Which is at the end, like Rotherham United, you can't fill me enough.
Can't fill me enough.
You can't fill me enough. You can't do it in a Brummie accent. But yeah. And obviously there were lots of these and thous in it as well, because we tend not to speak. Well, if there's a group of us get together, we start reading and that.
They're taking out the these and thous a bit.
Yes, it was. But you said they put thrill in.
Well, only.
And to be honest, that's not bad actually. Because
you approve of that, do you?
Well, I don't approve of anything that they do.
The fact that United started singing it, because you say you travelled a lot with your work. Did you come back to Rotherham and suddenly discover that United was singing it?
I knew kids that I knew in Rotherham. I sort of introduced it to Sheffield United fans, and we all got on. And
they knew a good song when they heard one.
Yeah, and it's not a thing I probably might say there. I made that up, yeah. But it's certainly a thing we never fell out about. It's just.
So you obviously put those words together, what, 78, 79?
78, 79, yeah. Again, I couldn't put a specific date on it, but there were certainly in
punk era as well.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. Definitely predated the 80s.
And I suppose what I was going to ask is, when you hear it now and you see how popular it's become for United fans, how do you feel about it?
I don't like it. I don't like, because I'm a Rotherham fan, and I don't like either of Sheffield teams.
But are you angry that they sing it?
Well, probably was in the past, but things are a lot more unfriendly and hostile, weren't they, in the past? It annoys me a bit. Well, it annoys me quite a lot actually, but it's mainly the facts that, in my opinion, they get words wrong. But it was certainly, to me, it was effortless. And it was quite often, if I'd go and watch reserves one night, and it'd be on a day like this, and in Masborough, and there's no crowd there because you'd only get 50 or 100 turning up. If I were on my own, or with just an odd mate or two, but a lot of the time I'd be on my own. But I started thinking about these sort of things and the environments and what was going on there, and it was an absolute hellhole.
You can't argue with a song. Well, I think we've given it a hell of a go.
You fill up my senses.
BBC Sounds app. On your smart speaker,
play BBC Radio Sheffield.
And on your radio.
The sound of South Yorkshire and North Derbyshire is BBC Radio Sheffield.
At 7 o'clock with your BBC News update, I'm Catherine White. Police searching for a missing British diplomat have found a body in a forest in Hampshire. Richard Morris was last seen in Alton in early May. Officers say formal identification is yet to take place, but the 52-year-old's family have been told. His death is not being treated as suspicious. The travel company TUI says it's investigating claims that its cabin crew failed to ensure passengers followed coronavirus guidelines during a flight from the Greek island of Zante to Cardiff. At least 16 cases of COVID-19 have so far been linked to the flight last Tuesday. Simon Calder, the travel editor of The Independent, says it's worrying that it's taken the authorities nearly a week to contact people who are on board and tell them to self-isolate.
The whole point of the passenger locator form is that it's got all our details, which airline, which flight number, where are you staying, what's your mobile phone number, and you'd imagine that would be done within hours of this becoming known. As it is, these people would have been walking around for a week, mingling with the rest of society.
The government has said it's too early to decide whether next year's A-levels and GCSE exams in England should be delayed. Labour has called on ministers to push back the exams, saying pupils would benefit from extra teaching hours after their education was disrupted by the pandemic. Joanne Baird is an advisor to the exams regulator, Ofqual.
It's not the case that you can just deliver millions of exam results in exactly the same way with a 6 weeks delay. So it would have a knock-on effect, and when the exam results could be given to pupils and to universities and so on.
2 men arrested after reports of a suspicious device in the toilet of a passenger plane have been released without charge. RAF jets were scrambled to intercept the Ryanair plane and escort it to Stansted Airport last night. Counter-terror officers said the object was a mobile phone and posed no threat. Restaurants, cafes and pubs are welcoming people this evening for the last night of the government's Eat Out to Help Out scheme. Some within the hospitality sector are warning that more support will be needed in the coming months to help the industry recover from the coronavirus lockdown. Steve Matthews runs a cafe in Carlisle.
People have been surprisingly nervous about coming out, especially older people. And I think the Eat Out scheme has really helped with that. They've ventured out and then they've come into the shops and so on. So psychologically, it's a scheme that's done exactly what it's intended to do.
A huge search is underway in the English Channel for someone who's trying to swim from Dover to Calais unaccompanied. A helicopter and rescue teams were dispatched to the sea off Kent after the Coast Guard received a call from a member of the public saying a friend was trying to cross to France. The incident is understood not to be related to migrant crossings. You're up to date. It's 3 minutes past 7.